Welcome back to This is Baseball. I'm Brandon Johnson. We're back. We took last week off with the All-Star break. I just felt like that was a good point in the season. The league, MLB, is taking a break. Felt like it was a good time for the podcast to take a break, but excited to be back. But let's cover the All-Star break real quick. Let's kind of run through that. So, obviously, Monday night, you have the Home Run Derby with a new format. And I think it went really well where every player basically had a chance. It wasn't head-to-head in the first round. It was just top four scores go through. I think that actually ended up being better for the viewing experience. I was thinking back as I was watching it with just some Royals that participated in recent home run derbies. I think Mike Moustakas was in 2018 and Salvador Perez was in 2021. I don't believe either of them advanced past the first round, and I feel like I remember losing interest after they left. I think Mike Moustakas was in the first group when he went, and he lost. And I think with a new format, you have, let's say, like Bobby Witt Jr. Bobby Witt Jr. had 20 home runs in the first round, and I think Alec Boehm had 21. So let's say in the old format, Alec Boehm and Bobby Witt Jr. face off, and Alec Boehm hits one more home run than Bobby Witt Jr. So in that format, Bobby Witt Jr. would have been done, but it gave you a reason to keep watching and stay tuned in to the Home Run Derby with the current format, because all Bobby Witt Jr. had to do was be one of the top four home run totals, and he would move on to the semifinals. Obviously, he was able to do that, and he ended up losing. He went all the way to the finals and lost to Teoscar Hernandez, who was the first Dodger to win the Home Run Derby. Bobby Witt Jr. almost tied it in the bonus round, but came up basically inches short. And Teoscar Hernandez won 14-13. And overall, I felt like that was just one of the better viewing experiences and just better home run derbies that I've really seen in recent memories. So I like the format, and I hope that they stick with it next year, because I think for the first time in a while, that was a genuinely interesting and fun home run derby. Now, the All-Star game, I, again, was pretty happy with. I think, again, the All-Star game, the MLB All-Star game, is one of the better All-Star games, if you will. It's the closest thing you get to really what an actual game is in MLB versus what the other leagues have. I think the only kind of negative that the All-Star game had is the uniforms. That Nike and MLB have made All-Star game specific uniforms for each team. For the AL and NL, they've been kind of negatively received, and Rob Manfred actually addressed that and said that they'll be looking next year possibly at going back to the players wearing their home team's jerseys. And I think that's better. I think that's better for the viewers to be able to identify players. Maybe you're not super familiar with a certain player. If they're in their home jersey, they're going to be a lot more identifiable than if all the players are wearing the same jersey. So overall, pretty fun game. Paul Skeens starting the All-Star game as a rookie. I think that was the right choice. Shohei Ohtani hits a 3-run home run. And the American League ends up winning, as the American League really has done for what seems like forever now, outside of like maybe one or two times. But a great weekend. And jumping ahead to this past weekend, just catching up again, it was Hall of Fame weekend for MLB. We had players get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Joe Mauer Adrian Beltre, Todd Helton, and then manager Jim Leland. Obviously, all of those players well-deserved. Joe Mauer, Adrian Beltre, first ballot Hall of Famers. Todd Helton finally gets in. Jim Leland, Tigers legend. And this is fun because these are players that I can pretty much remember all of their careers. If that kind of gives you an idea of, I'm 27, so it's weird to see a player basically go start to finish in a career, and I can say that I remember most of it, if not all of it. Joe Mauer was actually one of my favorite players growing up. I think probably because I played a lot of MLB The Show, and he was on the cover like 2 or 3 different times. And so I was like, okay, he's pretty good. But a good weekend, and just taking a look ahead to next year's ballot. And I kind of got into this earlier in the off season, so you can go check out that episode if you want like a really in-depth kind of look at Hall of Fame stuff. But some 3 players that are like really stick out. Ichiro is on the ballot next year. I think he has the potential to be unanimous. CC Sabathia could go in as a starting pitcher. And then Billy Wagner. Billy Wagner has one more chance to get into the Hall of Fame. This is his 10th and final year on the ballot. His percentage has gone up every year. It was just over 73% this year, and you need 75% of the vote to get in. I think that he is going to get over that number next year at the next vote, and I think he'll get in. But I think definitely Ichiro and probably CC Sabathia and hopefully Billy Wagner. That's kind of the look at the next class, potential class for the Hall of Fame. Now let's go around the league a little bit and jump into some of the standings. It's been a few weeks since we've done that, so let me hop into that. So in the American League, we'll start there. American League East, the Orioles are leading the East. They're 60-39. They're a game and a half above the Yankees, who are 60-42. In the American League Central, the Guardians are 59-40. They're 4 games above the Royals and Twins. So that division has actually tightened up a little bit. Before the All-Star break, it kind of seemed like that division could have been all said and done, but Cleveland has had a really bad stretch. They're 3-7 in their last 10. Twins are 5-5, but the Royals are 8-2. They're really hot right now. And then the American League West, something that has really been inevitable, and we've kind of teased out all season long, is the Mariners and Rangers really weren't playing well enough and doing enough to get separation away from the Astros. The Astros started playing some pretty good ball over the last few months, and looking at it now in the second half of the season, the Astros are tied for first place with the Mariners, and the Rangers are 4 back and really don't seem like they have a good shot at making the playoffs. But the Astros are inevitable. This is who they've been for the last 6 or 7 years. They're a team that you can pretty much bet being in the postseason. They're built for long-term success and sustained success, however you want to say it. And here they are again, in first place in the American League West. So, do the Astros go back to the ALCS? Obviously, we don't know, but if they get in, they're one of those teams that you have to watch out for. Let's stick with the AL and check out the wild card. So, the wild card is really tight in the AL. So, leading with the first spot, New York Yankees, they're 3.5 games clear. And then the Twins and Royals are tied for second. Obviously, there's only 3 spots, so one of them would be the third spot if the season ended today, and I believe that would be the Royals. But just outside of that, the Red Sox are 2 games back, Mariners are 3.5 back, and then Tampa, who's 500, they're 5.5 games back. I would imagine that Tampa is potentially going to be a seller at the deadline. We'll see, though. But let's head over to the National League. So leading the National League East, the Philadelphia Phillies, who were well represented at the All-Star game, they're 8.5 games over the Atlanta Braves, who are having a good season, by the way. The Phillies are 63-37, and that is the best record in MLB. In the NL Central, Milwaukee Brewers leading that division. They're 57-43. They're 5 games up on the St. Louis Cardinals. And something that's fun about the Brewers is, they traded Corbin Burns. Craig Counsell left and went to Chicago. And you thought, okay, Milwaukee's going to be irrelevant. And they've just continued like nothing ever happened. And they're just kind of the model of consistency and are on their way to winning another NL Central title. And speaking of the Cubs are 9 games back and have basically punted on the 2024 season. In the NL West, Los Angeles Dodgers 60-41. They're 8.5 games up on the Padres. The Diamondbacks are 9 games out. But in the National League wild card, the Atlanta Braves are the first wild card teams. They're the first wild card team. The St. Louis Cardinals, who have just really had a great, really last 60 games. They're 52-48. They have that second wild card spot, and the Mets are in third. But the National League wild card race is really tight. So Pittsburgh is a half game out. San Diego's a half game out. Arizona's 1 game out. Chicago, again, they're 3.5 games out, but they don't sound like they are going to try to compete this year. But that's looking at the standings. That's kind of what next week's episode is going to be about, is the trade deadline. Who will the buyers and sellers be? We have a lot to think about over the next week of, if you're the Pirates, okay, you're half game out. Padres, you're half game out, but realistically, is this your year? Which I think if you're the Pirates, you should go for it. But the Mets, 51-48, they're firmly in it, so they might think that they're buyers. And then you have teams where like in the AL Central, I mentioned it earlier, where it kind of looked like Cleveland was going to run away. I mentioned it a couple weeks ago that I think it was inevitable that Cleveland has a bad stretch at some point this season. They hadn't really had one yet, and they're in the middle of it now. And the Royals and Twins, mainly the Royals, have really taken advantage of that cold streak, because while the Guardians are 3-7, the Royals are 8-2, and they have a superstar in Bobby Witt Jr. that's playing out of his mind. He has 14 hits in his last 4 games or something crazy like that. And they're 56-45. They're 4 games out. They've already added some bullpen help, which is something that the Royals desperately needed. I'll be curious to see if they end up getting a bat as well, or if they feel better about where their offense is now. But I think that the AL Central is going to be fun to watch. I know kind of got off track there, but I think Royals, Twins, Guardians are teams that are going to be looking to improve their team at this trade deadline. But yeah, we'll have all of that next week. And then once we get past the trade deadline, we're going to look at some of these races a little bit closer, because we've got about 60 games left in the season. So it's go time for everybody. And we'll have a better picture after this trade deadline of who's in and who's out. So that's all I have this week. It was good to be back. I will see you next week. Thank you for listening.